David, thank you so much. What a great experience of worship together in song and praying that prayer that Christians have prayed together for more than 2,000 years, as our Lord taught us to pray. Welcome. It's so good to see you today. This is Opening Convocation. This today is a big deal. If you're a returning student, then you know how important that this day is, because we sort of regather, and classes have started again, and faculty and staff are regathered, and you see the faculty, nearly all the faculty of the university behind me on this platform, and it's a great beginning to the school year, where we try to ask ourselves, why are we here, and what is our purpose, and what do we have in front of us in the year ahead. If you're a new student, then this will be the first of several opening convocations of this sort, and we want you to be blessed by it and to experience the joy of being in an academic situation. You've come here to receive an education, to gain and to do the work that would allow you to achieve a diploma at the end of your course of study, but more than that, of course, to be prepared to live your life according to the will of God, to know what your gifts are, to know what your calling is, not only to have a job, but to be able to have a meaningful kind of work that enables you to fulfill your purpose in the world. It's a wonderful time of year, and we especially want to welcome everyone, of course, upon your return, but of course our new students, a lot of freshmen and transfer students who are joining us here on this occasion. It's just a wonderful time together. The passage that was read together out of Colossians by Professor Speller, this is one of the great texts of the New Testament. It could well indeed be an early Christian hymn. It has certain poetic features, so it's really a statement of some of the bedrock truths of the Christian faith, and I want us to reflect upon that in just a moment. But again, welcome. These are very special days for you. A university education is a very unique time of life. But why do we do it? I mean, why are you here? How traumatic is it for you to either return and get back into the academic grind, or to take up the mantle, the torch of this new learning experience? Sue and I have 7 children. We have 17 grandchildren, and they're all pretty young. Our grandchildren are. The oldest is only 7, so you can imagine when we get together for Christmas, it's a pretty chaotic time together. Well, one of the kids, Henry, is very talkative, pretty verbal and shrewd for his age. He's well, if you were to ask Henry how old he is, he would say he's 3.5, but he's really 3 2/3, but he doesn't know his fractions yet. But he just yesterday was saying to his mother. His mother wrote this down. Our daughter Henry said, 3. I'm 3. I'm going to be 4. Henry can count really well, by the way. He goes, I'm going to be 4, and then 5, and 6, and 7. This keeps going, and 8, and 9, and 10, and 11, and 12, and 13, and 14, and 15, and 16, and 17, and 18. I'm going to be 18, and then I'm going to go to college. No, I messed the story up. Then he said, I'm going to be 18, and our daughter said, and then you're going away to college. And he said, no. I'm not going without you. I'm sorry I messed that story up, but there's something to that, going off to college. Henry, the 3.5-year-old, the idea of leaving home without mama, that's pretty daunting to him. I've got a cartoon here. I showed it to students last Sunday, but I've got a cartoon here somewhere. Can you see that? Yeah. There's the first day of school. That's when you were going off to school, and you didn't want to leave home either. Mom was having to, drag you to school. But now here it is about 12 years later if you're a freshman, and yeah, mom's trying to hold you back. Well, maybe not. But these are fun and traumatic days. Henry's not going to college without his mama. But why do we do this? Why did you come to a university? And why did you come to a university like this? There are lots of different kinds of universities. We are a Christian university, so what does that mean? What do we do here, and why would you come? Well, I'm sure there are different reasons in terms of why young people go off to college. I mean, let's be honest, lots of different reasons. They've heard about the parties, and they want to go to college for the parties. Or maybe they go to a school that has one of their favorite sports teams. They want to root for a special football team, maybe. Or maybe it's just that stage of life. Or maybe it's your parents' expectations. Or maybe you actually want a job. Or maybe you're interested in learning. Or maybe you want to join a certain club or organization. Or you want to meet new people. Or maybe you want to find husband or wife. Or have new friends. Or just leave the place you're at. It's time to get away from home. Why? Well, there are all kinds of reasons that people go to a university. So, but what's a good reason for going? Why should you go? Or maybe what's a good set of reasons for going to a university? Why a university like this? Why do we exist? What's our purpose? Well, one way to try to answer that question is to ask ourselves, okay, what do you do at a university? And what can you expect to do? What are the good things that you can expect to do at a university like HBU? Well, I mean, you're going to go to classes. Maybe this will help us know why we come. You're going to go to classes. You're going to have some writing assignments. You're going to go to some football games. You probably will join a club or an organization. You're going to meet some new people. You're going to have some late night sessions with friends, just some interesting conversations. You'll have some parties to go to, maybe sorority or fraternity. You're going to take some midterm exams. You're just going to hang out with friends. All of those kinds of things. You're going to hear some lectures that maybe just cause you to think about things you've never thought about before. You're going to get, this diploma. So those are the kinds of things we do. But how does all that hold together? Is there some underlying cause or reason for why you would go to a university, or why a university like ours would exist? If you look at our founding documents, there are some similarities. There's largely generalities in our founding documents, in our mission statement, in our vision statement called the 10 Pillars, based upon the aspirations of faculty and staff a number of years ago, as we talked about those things, and some alumni and the board of trustees and so on. This vision statement called the 10 Pillars, and visually based upon the 10 pillars that are sort of outdoors, that are around the Holcomb Mall. But if you look at these documents, they have some generalities. They all tend to say things like, we're going to be a Christian institution, we're going to do academic things in higher education that are consistent with the aims and purposes of the Christian faith. They'll refer to the scriptures, for example. So at least we're getting warmer. What kind of institution are we? What do we intend when we try to offer an education? But again, what holds all these things together? I'm sure that foundational documents like the scriptures and foundational convictions and core convictions like the scriptures are definitely part of the reason for being and the justification for having an institution like ours, as founded more than 54 years ago by our founders. But again, what holds it together? What's the purpose? I'll give you a couple of alternatives. There are many on a spectrum. I'm going to give you a couple of alternatives, both of which I'm not too sure about. But here are some things that you commonly hear. I heard both of these reasons for a Christian university from college presidents. I'm a college president, have been for a number of years, been here at HBU for almost exactly 8 years now. I started college in 1967 and finished up in graduate school really in 1977, so had 10 years. So I've been around universities a long time. I then then started teaching in 1979. So I've been around institutions of higher learning for a long time, for just in a teaching role or an administrative role for 35 years. So you'd think this is something that everybody knows, but I've heard a couple of different ends of the spectrum. One college president I used to hear say this all the time. He would say, referring to a Christian school, he would say, we exist for the same reason that any state or public institution exists. We're going to teach chemistry and English and biology and all those classes. But, he said, here's the difference. I just like to think that we're a little bit nicer than others. That if a student or a colleague or somebody is impatient, that we're just going to be a little kinder, a little more patient. We're going to be nice. It's a nice group of faculty, isn't it? I mean, they look nice. So I'm not making this up. So that was one view, that we just do what everybody else does, but we're just a little nicer about it, friendly. I have to say, I find that a little bit limiting and rather incomplete. In a certain sense, it's kind of narrow and simplistic. I call it, in my own way of thinking, sort of a fragmented view. If you think about it, it's a view that sort of starts with, okay, as if we know, here's what universities do. They teach English, math, Spanish, history. They have all these subjects. They have all these disciplines. And so the entire frame of reference for a student is divided up into the subjects, the majors, the classes, the disciplines. And so that's what institutions of higher learning do. We deliver these disciplines, but in the case of a Christian school, we're just a little nicer. It just seems so fragmented. In the first place, who said that the organization of knowledge should take place around the disciplines that we've decided upon? The disciplines as created, as any of our faculty can tell you, and anyone involved in whatever, the history of philosophy, the history of knowledge, the intellectual history, the history of education, can tell you that the disciplines as we have them are really a fairly recent product historically. And the disciplines that we have, they change because we learn new things and we create, guess what, interdisciplinary programs, and we team teach things because the areas of knowledge are constantly proliferating and changing. And so whatever a curriculum might have been, 100 years ago or 50 years ago or today, who says that's the way life ought to be divided up? And furthermore, nobody lives like that. Nobody lives like that. The disciplines are purely artificial, useful constructs that give you a window into a certain area of learning so that you can, we hold other things off temporarily so that you can have a window into certain ways of learning and certain areas of learning, but it's purely artificial because as every scholar, every student knows, I mean, you'll be in a class and you might be in a whatever science class or a philosophy class or a theology class, and something will click in your mind and you'll say, well, now how does that relate to, and you'll ask a question about whatever, you're in sociology and you'll ask a question about theology, or you're in biology maybe, and a question about the Bible will come to your mind. And so we ask these different kinds of questions. And of course the answer sometimes has to be the following: I'm sorry, we don't have time to discuss that. That's a legitimate answer because you can't cover everything in every class all the time. But what would not be, to my mind, a legitimate answer would be, I'm sorry, but we don't discuss that around here. Because, all questions, ultimately, whether you may not have time for them all the time. I know my grandchildren come to me sometimes and they say, hey, can you read me this book? And I go, well, yeah, I want to, but I've just got to be over at the office right now. And so sometimes you don't have time for every question, every activity. But it doesn't mean that the activity of, say, reading a book to my grandchildren or telling them the story is not a legitimate and important activity, and there ought to be a time for it and a place for it. All questions are legitimate. All truth is God's truth. And so, the disciplines are artificial, and we don't live life that way. We don't divide ourselves up into, well, here I am, this is my chemical self, and this is my sociological self, and this is my philosophical self. No, life is, we're trying to be whole creatures. So I find it just too simple just to say, oh, well, we're just going to learn a bunch of subjects, and then we're just going to try to be nice when we do it. Our world is far too complex for that. Our world is far too troubled. Can you imagine taking our generals or our politicians or our bureaucrats or our ambassadors dealing with or our law enforcement, dealing with some of the problems that are dealt with today, going over to the Middle East, for example, and taking all that we know about history and languages and culture and religions and the relationships of people, and about families and clans and ancient traditions of the Bible, of Quran, and the history of this people group and that people group and ethnicities, and gathering all these people into the room, and you've got ISIS, this terrorist organization, which has crucified people and beheaded journalists and engaged in kidnapping and rape, and you get everybody in the room and you say, let's be nice. Isn't that a little simplistic? Let's be nice. Or the people of Ferguson, Missouri, with the conflicts that are there with in terms of law enforcement and in the business community and African Americans and different groups of African Americans within that same city, and again, law enforcement and the federal government and the Justice Department and outside spokespersons and the media, journalism, and we try to, okay, well, here's our great reconciliation technique. We're going to take everything we know about human nature and psychology and families and law enforcement and governmental models and police and military and economics and small businesses. We're going to take everything we know and we're going to get everybody together in a room and we're going to say, no, let's just be nice. No, I mean, life is a little more complex than that. There are deeply, profoundly moral issues to life that cross all of the disciplines, and the knowledge itself it crosses and it has to be integrated in some way. Well, the other view I heard one time from a college president was this one: president of a Christian college. The first one was president of a Christian college. It's the let's be nice theory. The other one was here's the other one. The other one was, at our institution, the books and the classes and the knowledge and the buildings and the credentials and all that, it's really not all that important. I hope no one's offended about this description, but it's really not all that important. It's really just a kind of, it's a front. This is just our opportunity to tell students about Jesus so that when they die, they'll go to heaven. Well, don't let anybody misunderstand. I'm deeply committed to Jesus. I believe our lives ought to be submitted to Jesus. I believe that those who are in Christ, when they die, they move to be in the presence of the Lord. But that's not the end of the story, even in biblical theology about the last things. I mean, when you die and you're with the Lord, God isn't done yet. There's going to be a resurrection of the dead. There's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. And the Bible talks about Christians being in charge of a new creation in some way. I mean, so dying and going to heaven, even that is such a limited view of the Bible. But look, that's such a truncated view of Scripture and theology, and it's a terribly truncated view of what a Christian higher education ought to be. I mean, are you telling me that everything we've learned is just a front? It doesn't mean anything? And you hear this sometimes. Sometimes you'll hear it from a pulpit, a Christian pulpit, or sometimes you'll just hear it from sincere Christian people, or from the college president I knew who said that. It was just like, just all these books and stuff. This world doesn't really matter. This world doesn't really matter. You do hear that sometimes from pulpits. This world doesn't matter. Just don't worry too much about this. The only thing we really should do is just make sure that we know that when we die, we know Jesus so we can go to heaven. You mean to tell me that if I have a little granddaughter born, or you have a little sister born, who has a hole in her heart that doesn't fully close as it should upon birth, or within the next several days and so on, the heart doesn't really develop, are you telling me that the fact that a doctor today has a pediatric cardiologist, has a surgeon, has the knowledge and the skill. And the pediatric cardiology nurses, are you telling me that while I'm waiting in the waiting room for this surgery and that nurse comes out and explains everything to us about what's going to happen? And the chaplain who's had theological training comes and talks to the family and prays with us? And that whole team of doctors who spent their lives learning how to do anesthesia and do a delicate surgery that in some ways today is rather simple but still delicate. To do a surgery that will heal that little girl, and all those books and learning, that just doesn't matter. That little girl who lives because of that delicate but today rather simple surgery, the little girl who 30 years ago or 40 years ago would have just been born and she would have just sort of lived for a few days, and then she would have started gurgling and spitting and being congested, and then just slowly died, and the parents and the doctors go, well, we don't know. The baby just died. The baby just died. In places around the world today, that's exactly what will happen. Are you telling me that little baby who has been healed by the knowledge, the experience, the training, the donors who gave to the hospitals, the expertise that have been brought to bear in pre-med classes, in nursing classes, in med school, and all the business administrators who made all that happen, all of that is just worth nothing? And the little girl who sits at the table when she's 5 years old and makes funny little comments, and she's healed and she's healthy and she's happy and she's the joy of the whole family's life. And she goes on and she's, are you telling me that's worth nothing? Are you telling me that you can get on an airplane and fly at 35, 40,000 feet and you can at 600 miles an hour, built by engineers and scientists and designers and air traffic controllers lead it, and IT people have developed the computer software systems, and people have managed an economy so there's enough cash flow to buy the tickets, and you can get on that airplane, and while you're sitting in that, and it's a little bit, the cabin's a little chilly, so you get a blanket to cover up a little bit, and you can open your iPhone and put it on airplane mode, and you're a student and you want to read more to understand about the causes of the First and Second World Wars, and you want to read about the development of life in the 20th century, particularly in Europe and America, and so on, and you want to read the biography of Hitler done by Alan Bullock, a study of tyranny, that you can read that on an airplane in airplane mode off of your iPhone, and all that's nothing? Is that nothing? Or an artist can build a great work of art, and people can look at it and be stirred by it and moved by it. Is that nothing? Look. The passage that we have read together, Colossians 1, let me just read a few phrases for you again. He is the image, talking about Christ. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. God's the creator God. This passage actually is based upon, in some ways, the Old Testament passage. You'll hear this in your theology Bible classes. The Shema, Hear, O Israel, Deuteronomy 6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. He's the creator God of all that there is. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This creator God is the only one worthy of our worship. He's the one true and living God. This passage sort of has that as its background. He is the image of the invisible God, referring to the Son of God, Christ. He is the preeminent one. That's what the word firstborn here means. He's the preeminent one of all the created order. Sounds to me like the creation's important. Sounds to me like somebody who says the only reason for having a Christian university is just so that, we can tell everybody that when you die how to go to heaven. That's a little bit too limiting. He's the firstborn of all creation. For in him, in Christ, all things, it's going to be heaven and earth, by the way, visible and invisible. All things were created, things in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible. Now he refers to angelic and political entities. Thrones, dominions, rulers, authorities. All these things have been created through this Christ, the Son of God, the image of God, through him and for him. He's the summing up of all of human history and the purposes and plans of God. This Son of God is also head. This is the new creation. Something was wrong with the old creation. It wasn't evil because it was material, but it fell, and so it's hostile to God. And so the heavenly powers and the earthly powers now are alienated from God. Evil is real. So the creation is important, but evil is also real. Just be nice. Oh, come on. That doesn't get at the problem. But he's the head of the body, the church. This is the beginning of the new creation. He's the beginning. He's the firstborn, referring to the resurrection of Jesus. This is the start of the new creation. The old order has to pass away. This is the new creation, the firstborn from the dead, so that he himself might come to have first place, the preeminent role, Lord of heaven and earth, visible and invisible, the old creation and now the transformed creation, first place in everything. For it was the Father's good pleasure for all the fullness, and when you read Colossians, it's the entire fullness of deity, of the presence of God. This parallels 2:9. The fullness of deity dwells in him bodily. It was God's plan for all of God's plan, purpose, and personal identity to dwell in him and through him. Notice, to reconcile, just people one by one. No, to reconcile all things to himself. The creation itself has been corrupted. It's fallen. To reconcile all things to himself. And how did he do this? Well, here's here's this turning point, strange moment. Having made peace and shalom. Shalom means to bring the fragmented things together. To reconcile is when two people are estranged and alienated and you bring them together. The relationship's been broken when a man and his wife are estranged from one another. You want them to be reconciled. So having made peace through the blood of his cross, the death of Jesus. Through him, I say, this reconciliation of all things takes place, things through Christ, whether things on earth or things in heaven. The death and resurrection of Jesus transform this fallen creation, and through him to reconcile all things to himself. In a verse we didn't read, verse 21, and you, Paul tells his audience, were formerly alienated and hostile in mind, engaged in evil deeds, and yet now he has reconciled you in his fleshly body through death in order to make us whole again, to present you, to restore the creation, to present you before him holy and blameless and beyond reproach. The scriptures tell us in Genesis that we have been made in the image of God, that we've been made for a purpose. It's God's world, but now he's put the human beings, male and female, made them in his image, and he says, let them rule, to have dominion, to have an in-charge status. So the creation is important. God has made it. Granted, this terrible problem emerges in Genesis 3. The human beings rebel. And the rest of the Bible, in many ways, is sort of this rescue operation. But the rescue operation is not so that when we die, we go to heaven. The rescue operation, that's there, but it's just a part of it. The rescue operation is so that God, having restored his people who are now reconciled to him through Christ, can begin to live their lives in the world. We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, to do the work of God in the world, to be the people of God in the world, to live here and now as people who are citizens of this glorious new age. You know, the scriptures begin with a garden and they end with a garden. God's interested not just in saving individual souls, but in reconciling individuals to himself so that as reconciled beings, we can now go back and do the work he called us to do, to be in charge of the creation, to care for the creation. I mean, Adam and Eve were to tend the garden, and then they named the animals. And granted, there's this fall, but in the last chapter, at the end of Scripture, there's another garden. But it's the restored garden. It's the new creation. We're not just saved so that we can be individually saved. We're saved to do God's work in the world, to be God's people in the world. Both of the views I gave are they're wrong, they're narrow, they're simplistic. One view just says, okay, well, study hard and be nice. That doesn't take seriously the real complexity of knowledge and the problem of evil in the world. The other view just says, oh, well, forget the world. The world's no good. Study doesn't matter. Just get saved so that when you die, you go to heaven. No, both views are wrong. Be reconciled to God through Jesus Christ so that we can do God's work in the world. That's what God's purpose is. At the end of the age, there's going to be this glorious garden, Revelation 21 and 22. The truth is, though, it's a garden and a city. And this city will be like a garden, but it'll have safety and security. It'll have beauty, golden streets. It'll have the presence of God. There's no need for a temple there because the whole place is the temple where God dwells. God is there. And there'll be a river of life and the tree of life, and the leaves of the tree will be for the healing of the nations. As the people of God, we belong, Jew and Gentile, bond and free, male and female. We are no more barbarian, Scythian, slave or free. Through Christ, we belong together to do God's work in the world, redeemed and reconciled to God for a purpose. You're here. You're here to know why God made you, the purpose for which He made you. To learn as much as you possibly can about this world and to reflect deeply upon the deep problems of our world, its tragedies, its brokenness, its fragmentation, and its evil, and being reconciled and living with reconciled and forgiven people, being salt and light in the world, to be agents of transformation so that we, as God's people, can be a part of helping one day, a world where one day, because of the mercies of God through Christ at the end of the age, the lion will lie down with the lamb, and they will beat their swords into plowshares and study war no more. And God through Christ will be present among us. Here and now, what we do now counts. It counts. It's important. It means we're being restored in the image of God. Restored, recreated, transformed to be the people that He made us to be. Do God's work. Study while you are here. Learn all that you can learn. Submit your heart and your mind to all the sources of truth and knowledge you can possibly find. Live in friendship and fellowship and community with others. And be ready. Be prepared to be an agent of transformation, an agent of hope, an agent of reconciliation, an agent who provides healing, the leaves of healing for the nations, until the glory of God covers the earth as the waters cover the sea. God bless you.